and welcome to another video. Down in Southsea, they're really cracking on with the sea defences down in Southsea. In fact, half of the coast down in Southsea is now closed off for a couple of years while they, I think they're doing all kinds of work on the current sea defences. I mean, this place looks massively different than it did even, a year ago. Anyway, this video, I'm often asked by beginners and some seasoned photographers actually what I think are potential pitfalls or mistakes that beginner photographers kind of fall trap into when they're first starting out. And I've done a couple of videos sort of kind of similar to this, but I want to touch on a few things. So yeah, stick with this video if you're new to photography. This will help you out massively. It'll certainly give you a bit of an insight into where potentially you want to kind of not fall into, because there are lots of things out there, but I'm just going to give you maybe the top 5 or so that I think are the most important things to look out for as a beginner photographer. So here we go, let's do this. I want to come down out of the wind. It's quite windy up there. Hope the audio holds up. Anyway, the first one I think is probably the most important, and probably the biggest mistake that beginner photographers make. Let me just take you off for this a second. And it's concentrating on the gear you've got. Having the better kit, what's new out, all that kind of stuff. Who's got the Gucci bits of kit? And yeah, there's probably a bit of truth in the fact that the better kit, the more expensive kit will potentially produce better results or better quality, or potentially make your photography a bit easier. But that's not where you want to start. You want to start with the gear you've got. The best camera is the one you've got on you when you need it. Sometimes for me that's my phone, and I'll talk about this a bit later on when we talk about composition. Photography is about telling a story, and you can't just concentrate on your gear to tell that story. Your gear's not going to tell that story. You need to evoke an emotion in the person who's going to be looking at your picture. And there's so much to be said for learning the craft first and then thinking about making it easier, or potentially upping your quality after you've learned the craft, after you've learned the art. And I've always said that 80% of my photography is about telling a story, and that's composition. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But people are so hung up on the gear they're using and who's got the better kit and what's new out. That's massive. And I'm not saying that I don't have pretty good kit, because I do, but I've got a business and I've been doing photography for 20 years. If you're just starting out in photography, you need to learn how to use the kit first before you think about all that kind of stuff. So that's the first one. That's quite a major one, I think. I think it's the one that most photographers fall into really quickly. You get into the game of producing images and people start clicking the like button, and you start thinking to yourself, where can I spend the money? And it's just not necessary when you're first starting out. Certainly as a beginner, you need to concentrate on honing your craft, that kind of stuff. So that's the first one. Let's move on to another one, potentially different location. Still kind of cold. The second one I think is another important one, and for me it's a large one, because my photography, like I've already said, is all about telling a story. So having a bad composition, and it's not something that is easily rectified without a bit of practice. You need to learn the certain rules and practices involved in creating a story with a picture. You've got to imagine that it's a 3D world you're taking a picture of, but then that has to translate onto a 2D image that someone has to look at and have an emotional response. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you look at things like landscape photography, when there's often not an obvious subject. Using compositional elements like rule of thirds, using leading lines, can be absolutely massive. And I don't know the psychology behind it, but rule of thirds and leading lines, all that kind of stuff, the compositional elements that make up your image, is going to be something you're going to have to to learn and understand relatively quickly to make sense of your picture and the idea that you have, because you can go somewhere and look at a place and think, this is amazing, this is absolutely fantastic. Try and take a picture of it and look at it later, and then you're saying to yourself, it doesn't quite look the way I imagined it. You know, your vision of what your picture's going to be. Potentially because those compositional elements aren't there, it might look nice in the 3D world around you. You've got two eyes that see all these nice, wonderful locations, but trying to translate that onto a 2D image, it's often quite difficult. So using those compositional elements and those rule of thirds is quite crucial. Not easy to learn, but with practice you can maybe walk around and see those almost without realising it. Oh, the sun is blaring, look at that. Beautiful. Yeah, composition. The third one is lighting, bad lighting. And people get this mistake quite a bit because it's one of the hardest things to master in photography is good lighting. Now that's whether you're adding light in a studio or whether you're using the sun as your key light, your main light in landscape photography, using the sun. Bad lighting is the one that gets most beginners most of the time, and that's mainly because you have a situation like we've got like that. You got a really harsh light covering your entire area, but it is a harsh light, and it'd be the same whether you're adding a light in the studio. We have modifiers in the studio which we can then kind of almost bend the light and soften the light. You can't do that with the sun. So I see a lot of landscape photographers falling into the trap of shooting during the day when the sun's like that. Now, there's no modifier on the sun, but there are modifiers in the atmosphere. So when you've got a hazy day or when you've got a cloudy day, but it's still quite bright out, it's almost like a natural diffuser. So doing those kind of shoots during the day when the cloud's out, rather than doing those shoots in the day when the sun is out and you've got really harsh shadows, is something that photographers, certainly beginner photographers, don't see and don't understand. And that's the case for all kinds of photography. It's not just the photography for, you know, landscape photography stuff. I mean, look at me now, I'm lit by the sun and I've got harsh shadows all over my face. I wouldn't light a model like that, and I certainly wouldn't light a landscape like that. I wouldn't want to take a landscape when there's so many harsh shadows, because it's the same effect as you get if you were trying to light a model like this. Look how harsh that light is on my face. I never do that, so I don't generally shoot during the day unless it's cloudy or I'm doing maybe something like long exposure, and that's something completely different. We look at things like, for landscape photography in particular, look at things like golden hour. So that time in the morning when the sun's just coming up and when the sun's just going down in the evening. Perfect time to shoot landscapes. And a lot of photographers I see fall in the trap of just going out during the day and snapping. So yeah, bad lighting is the next one. Let's carry on. Love this place, look at that. There's a private balcony for this house just here, so I'm going to be quite quiet because there's obviously a private house. It's public footpath to get here, but yeah, really nice area. People don't realise this is here. This is just in Old Portsmouth. I often see pictures of it and wonder where it is. I found it a few years ago. Stumbled across it. Anyway, I'm waffling on. The last one for now, because there are more, I might make a second video, but the last one for now is over editing, and this is the one I see on social media, and it's not a major deal for me. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch, but when I see an image that's severely over edited, you have to wonder, you know, how long that person's been shooting for potentially. I mean, I'm all for the creative arts and photography being subjective. You know, what I like isn't always going to be what someone else likes, but I take and what I post on social media isn't always liked by everyone. That's fine, I get that. People don't like me swapping skies out. But the over edit I'm talking about is when you're pushing those sliders in Lightroom just a little bit too far, or you're hitting those one set presets on a phone app or something like that, and you oversaturate and over clarify and all that kind of stuff. And I personally think it's just a bit too much. Dial those settings back a little bit, and you know, go for a more realistic kind of edit than something that's mega overdone. You often see when those sliders are pushed to the nth degree that you get like white halos around the edges of stuff that's dark, stuff that's like on the background to the sky. The sky's their background. You see like around cliffs and stuff like that. You see like a white halo effect. That's when you know you've over edited, you pushed those sliders way too far. You brought the shadows up too much and you brought the lights or the whites down way too much. So that for me are my 5 tips for beginners, you know, mistakes not to, or traps and mistakes not to fall into. Let me know what you think. If you're a beginner photographer and you're looking to up your game, maybe these little pitfalls you can now sidestep and not fall into. Hopefully this video has helped you out. Whack a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and you got anything out of it. But if you are a beginner photographer and you're looking to take your photography just a little bit further, I do have, and I'm going to plug my photography course. It is partly online, and if you're local to me you can opt for some practical sessions too. But I've had a lot of good responses from it and a lot of good feedback, so I know it can help some people out. And if you're interested in that, just check my website in the description below. Let me know if you've got any comments as well. Always happy to answer comments, and always will answer comments and questions as best I can. Try and keep them constructive as normal. The silly ones I tend to just leave. Well, anyway, have a great afternoon. I know this video was a bit me talky rather than photographer. I'm down here ready to meet a chap for a workshop. I'm doing a long exposure workshop today. I'll do them locally if anyone's interested. Look at my website. Again, another plug. See what I did there? You see that, right? And if you haven't done so already, consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell to get updates every time I upload a new video. Just spinning a guitar in the background there. Look. And you'll be notified about any future videos coming out soon. You take care, guys. Take it easy. Bye.